reckoning, the implication is if it went to a second referendum. Do you accept... Look, let me move.
What I said was that every racist and anti-Semite in the country pretty much probably voted for Brexit. That's all.
And
that doesn't
mean...
mean...
know that and a secret ballot?
I don't know it.
How do you possibly know that?
I suspect it.
And I think you should apologise.
To who?
To 70
to racists and anti-Semites.
Because you've basically tried to slur anybody who voted Leave as a bigot, and I think you should apologise.
No, I haven't. I said that's the problem.
Listen, Mark, what you said is everyone who is a racist voted Leave.
How could he know that?
Well, that of course is up for discussion.
It's a secret ballot. No, how can he know?
You know, for all the reasons I've adduced already, which is that the problem for nationalists generally is that they fall into the hands of what we call ethnic nationalists.
All right, you mentioned Dominic Raab earlier, and on that we haven't got time to actually play the clip. Hang on. Let me bring in the two ladies. Hang on. Grace, there is a point that Dominic Raab said that there will be a day of reckoning if Brexit doesn't happen. And there would be a day of reckoning, the implication is, if it went to a second referendum. Do you accept that there is a danger of that?
No, totally. But as we can see now, this is such
a bit of a paradox that Nigel Farage subscribes to the great man of history view, really, given that he doesn't quite shape up to that sort of stature himself. And while I think that Trump certainly is a personification of major changes in geopolitics, I'm not so sure that it's the man himself that's truly significant. It's more what he symbolises.
And in terms of what he symbolises, has he had the greatest influence on the events of the year?
Well, yes, undoubtedly. But, I mean, as I say, it's what he symbolises. As with Brexit, it was a case that this was a political eventuality people didn't expect, but that's because we've moved beyond the frame of politics as it's been understood for a long time, and Trump rode that wave. To some extent he kind of created it as well, that's true, but Trump, Nigel, this is not Churchill, Hitler and Stalin. Thank God, in the case of the two latter. But in the case of the two latter ones, undoubtedly a good thing, yeah. So I think that's kind of weird, because we step back from a minute, people. These are not great statesmen or people.
What are they? What are they?
They're grubby little opportunists who are riding the coattails of history.
We're joined now by the novelist and commentator Will Self, who is supporting Remain, and supporting the Leave campaign, the crime writer and journalist Drida Mitchell. Drida Mitchell, you've taken a very interesting position, certainly not that of UKIP, but I'm wondering what you feel this whole campaign has told us about ourselves. Are we as nasty as some of the campaign has been?
I think the tone has not been there what it should be, and I myself found that very difficult to deal with. So I actually had to turn the telly off, and I did my own research. But I tell you what, I think it really does show how much of a divided Britain we're living in. There's always had that question, are we in or out? Is it better for Britain? But which Britain are you talking about? And I think in the last couple of weeks, that working class voice, particularly outside of London, has really come to the fore. And it's been a voice of dissatisfaction.
Well, is it the elite against the dispossessed and alienated?
No, I think it's a question of feelings and character. I don't think it necessarily cuts across economic grounds, John. I think Auden had it right. The best lack all conviction, while the worst, saving you, Drita, are carried away by a passionate intensity. The case for remaining has never been a heart case, it's a head case.
But I was in South Shields last night, and there were a lot of people who were voting, Leave, because they hate the government, and they feel the government hasn't delivered for them. And this is their chance to kick them in the teeth.
Absolutely, but at the same time, the Remain keep telling us how successful it has been in the EU. If it's such a success for working people, why are they not feeling so great? Why is it people who are at the lower end of the pay spectrum are the ones feeling it the most? So I think as well as a kick for the Tories, I think it's also a kick against the EU, quite rightly.
I think it's deeply worrying that people who I've spoken to who are voting to leave are saying that they just want the snow globe shaken up. And that's the kind of mentality that leads to extremism. It's a populist desire for people to feel that they're doing something. Here they see an opportunity to kick
But I'm interested, are you talking about people that you've spoken to in wide sections of society, outside of London and the South?
Yeah.
Places like Stoke, places like Hull, places like Sheffield. Have you been to hard working class communities and asked that kind of question?
Well, the last person I spoke to was a builder in Orkney. So you can't get further outside London and still be in Britain than
I think you need to go. I was in Stoke about 5 years ago, and I have to say I was very shocked at how very different it was from London. So for me, the EU referendum is about the type of Britain we all want to live in. We all want to live in, and we should all have an opportunity to do that.
But could I introduce another thing? I mean, are you partly opposed because you'd like a Europe that did work for working people, but that you actually would like to be in a Europe that worked, but not this one?
Everyone keeps saying Europe. We've got to be really clear. We're talking about the EU. We're talking about an organisation. We will still be within Europe. That is without a doubt. What we want is to have democracy. We don't have complete democratic control.
Well, you should have engaged more with your democratic process heretofore. Our governments are elected out of apathy. It's ridiculous people in the Brexit campaign using this as some kind of idea to re-actualise democracy. Why weren't you involved democratically before?
I have been. You know, I remember...
No, all those people who were saying...
Will and John, I remember taking my vote in 1987 for the very first time. So my vote is really key and important to me. And I feel passionate that democracy should rest in Britain. When I hear an organisation outside of Britain actually has some sense of controlling that, that can't be right. I don't feel I'm living in a complete democracy.
Let's ask Will a pretty key question. Supposing you win on Friday, will you be saying to yourself, I tell you something, we may have scraped away with our lives this time, we've got to do better for the people who get nothing out of this?
Oh, absolutely. And that's why I said...
But you're not going to, are you?
No, but the Remain vote is head, not heart. Nobody's in the Remain side, except people who are being fatuous, are trying to pretend that everything in the garden is rosy, either domestically or internationally.
Have you heard any of their leaders actually espousing, what I'm going to do is to put Britain in the heart of Europe to change it for the better?
No,
never.
because the campaign has been conducted on both sides hypocritically. So it's been conducted utterly hypocritically. Now, I say to you, Drida, not all Brexiters are racists, but almost all...
I like to think not.
But almost all... Just because you're black doesn't mean you can't be a racist. But,
whoa!
I can assure
Hang on a
you,
minute. You know, I'm not a racist, and I've been very, very clear that I'm not part of the official
Will you let me
Leave
finish
campaign.
the sentence?
I'm a voter
Will you let
who's
me
voting
finish
about
the
democracy.
sentence? Will you let me finish the sentence? Not all Brexiters are racists. But
most aren't.
Will you let me
most
finish?
Aren't. And I have to say that.
Will you let me finish? But almost all racists will be voting for Brexit. So those are your fellow travellers. Enjoy the ride.
You could say
enjoy the ride.
By the same token, Will, you could say all the elite will be voting to remain.
Exactly. And aren't you part of the elite, Will?
Try to find...
The metropolitan elite, Will. What do you know about people outside of London?
Listen,
what do you know about those lives?
This is about geopolitical issues as much as anything else. We live in a febrile and fissiparous world. This is about trying to preserve what stability we have.
Do you think you have the same vision of Britain? It seems to me you're talking about two completely different countries. She's talking about Stoke. I was talking about South Shields. You're talking about West Hampstead.
And isn't that the issue?
Steady on, John. That's a low blow. I mean, I would love it if the grateful nation would relocate me to Hampstead, but I'm currently living in South London.
I think, can I just interject, because to pick up on you talking about racism, this is what I hear from lots of people who I know who are white, working class. I grew up in East End of London. Are still part of that community. What they say is when they talk about particular issues, the reason they won't speak out is they're frightened of people like Will calling them a racist. They should have the space publicly to voice their concerns. So if you go to those communities, you should engage with them, Will, and start talking to them about their concerns.
I've been engaging with communities and being a political commentator and thinking about this stuff for a long time. I have one question for you. Do you think that Nigel Farage's campaign has blown the dog whistle of racism?
Nigel Farage is not part of the official Leave campaign, and I have publicly chastised Farage myself.
He's the guy you're following.
Pause on Nigel Farage. Thank you very much indeed, both of you. On different sides of the Brexit debate, Lionel Shriver and Will Self. I want to ask you both the same question. Lionel, what have you learnt today about the country you live in?
Well, I went to the rally at Parliament Square, and it did strike me that the people, at least who showed up there, are very traditionally patriotic, have what is to Remainers a more parochial idea of the country, and whereas Remainers obviously identify with this larger unit, which I find a little emotionally odd. That's where I don't quite get Remainers, where that's coming from, why you would identify with a large bureaucratic organization. But, you know, one of the things that I've noticed in the New York Times in particular is that they've been promoting this bizarre version of the Leave position, which is all very nostalgic and trying to bring back the British Empire. And I don't understand where they got that, because I've been following this very closely, and I never hear any hearkening back to the Empire.
Right,
it's much more a kind of more limited and cozier version of what it means to be British.
Will Self.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure we are on such radically different sides of the argument. I mean, I'm kind of militantly undecided, in fact. I think there's a perfectly good case for leaving the European Union. The problem is, as I've stated in numerous outlets, it's a vector that carries with it ethnic nationalism. And that's a problem. That's been the problem for the Remain side of the debate from day one. I don't care what Remainers say. If you go to the heartland and you talk to people and you're, not sort of insinuating, but just lay it open in an honest way, the ethnic nationalism comes up right away, immediately. So it's there. That's not the point. Where was the argument on the Leave side that this was a pragmatic, forward-looking way? Mervyn King was on the radio this morning saying, where was the argument about where the EU is really going and what the problems are with the currency union and what happened over that? So I think it's been a problem. If you ask me, John, for a diagnosis of our country's character, it's that it doesn't listen. If you want me to, on either side of the debate, because the Remainers have had plenty of years now to make the same principled case for Remain that is realistic about the options, and hasn't made it either. And what worries me so much, and I think many people, is that this sort of thing belies the old lie about the tolerance of the British character.
Lana Shriver, we're in a very bad place. How is this all going to be brought together? I mean, whether we leave or we don't, we've got to heal the country.
I don't know where we go from here. I certainly don't look at this and see everyone coming together in unity anytime soon. And one of the things that I puzzle over is, let's say that we don't really leave the European Union. After all, that's what this crowd is concerned with, whether in spirit or the whole thing is reversed. What is the penalty? What are the consequences? And I'm afraid that this crowd thinks there are no consequences. They'll just be ignored. It'll be like, that was unpleasant. Let's get on with, life as usual.
Yeah. I think that some people say that the inability of the members of Parliament to decide what to do is a sign of the vibrancy of our democracy. But to me, it looks like headless chickens running round in a circle. I think there's been a real failure of the political class. But here's the truth. Legitimacy has been hemorrhaging out of this place for a decade and a half. As a public commentator, I've been talking about the consequences of devolution, the move for the Celtic fringe to secede, the failure to reform the House of Lords, the failure to deal with even what voting system we use, whether it's a proportional or a single past the post. We've reaped what we sowed.
Is our democracy in trouble?
Yes, I think it is.
Died?
And my feeling about this is that the UK is probably going to be okay whether it's in or out of the European Union. It will survive. But what's really at issue right now is whether democracy proves out. Will you institute the people's will? And I'm not struck that you will.